I've been playing Lethal Company the past few days, and it's a pretty fun game, so I decided to try making a mod for it. The problem is, I have zero experience in mod development, so I had no idea how difficult this would be. The first thing I did was watch a few tutorials just to figure out the basics. Shout out to this guy Mr. Minx for helping me with some great tutorials. After following along with his tutorials, I made my first mod, which is an infinite sprint hack. I decided to continue adding on to this mod by adding in speed and flying hacks. This was more difficult than before because I didn't have a tutorial to follow along with, but because of my knowledge from the tutorials, I was able to get these features working. The speed hack works pretty much the same as the infinite sprint hack, it just modifies a variable in Lethal Company's source code that controls the player speed, although this was a little harder to get working because the variable was set to private, which made it harder to modify. Then I moved on to the flying hack, which just overrides the check that Lethal Company does to see if the player is grounded before jumping. Normally if a player is midair, this check would fail, so the player wouldn't be able to jump, but my mod overrides this and forces a jump whether the player is grounded or not. After developing all of these hacks for my mod, I had made fully functional movement hacks for Lethal Company. Obviously this is pretty unfair for regular players, so I'm not going to be using them in public lobbies or publishing them online, but I don't see the harm in making these for learning purposes. Now that I had a decent understanding of modding Lethal Company, I wanted to move on to making a proper mod. I saw this mod online that replaces the Bracken model of Goku, and this looked pretty easy to make and pretty funny, so I wanted to make something very similar. I decided to replace the Giant's model with Shrek since he's also a giant, and it was just the first idea I had. Firstly, I created a new Unity project because when modding files into a game, you have to export them as this thing called a Unity asset bundle first, which allows them to be loaded into the game via your mod. The first time I tried this with my Shrek model, it just wouldn't load into Lethal Company, which was really frustrating. So I tried to load in Unity's default sphere object, which worked fine, and I could replace the Giant's mesh data with a ball. This really confused me, so I ended up joining the Lethal Company modding Discord server to ask for help. This really cool guy named LXD helped me out by telling me what I was doing wrong. It turns out that when I'm loading in custom mesh data into a Unity mod, I have to include the mesh itself as well as the game object of the mesh in the asset bundle. This might seem super obvious, but when I was loading just the game object into the mod, everything seemed to work fine, as my mod would be able to load in the non-existent mesh and even read its polygon count somehow. After figuring out what I was doing wrong, I was finally able to load my mesh data of Shrek into Lethal Company, and after a bit of tweaking the position and scale of the mesh, it was exactly how I wanted it to be. Then all I had to do was remove the original mesh data of the Giant, and it worked great. I also added in a sound effect that plays when Shrek spots you. Here's a video of me playing with the mod on.
What are you doing in my swamp? What are you doing in my swamp?
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you should like and subscribe for more programming content like this. Anyway, until next time, goodbye.